The stars were quiet around the third planet of the Sol system when the Zilithian Deep Space Monitoring Station first picked up the signals. Radio waves, crude and scattered, leaked into space from the small blue world like whispers in the dark. Commander Zefali adjusted his sensory equipment and frowned. The readings were strange. The planet showed signs of intelligent life, but the signals made no sense. Instead of the organized, peaceful communications the Zilithian Empire expected from civilized species, these signals were chaotic. Different groups on the planet were sending different messages. Some talked about wars, others discussed weapons. Many seemed to be arguing with each other. "This cannot be right," Zefali muttered to his assistant. "Run the analysis again." The assistant, a younger Zilithian named Kethra, worked at her console for several minutes. Her large, gentle eyes reflected confusion as she looked at the results. "Sir, the readings are correct. The inhabitants of this world appear to be fighting each other constantly." Zefali's forearms moved in a gesture of disbelief. In all his years of service to the Empire, he had never encountered a species that fought its own kind so frequently. The Zilithians had evolved from peaceful plant-eaters on their homeworld of Zelith Prime. Their entire civilization was built on cooperation and harmony. The idea of intelligent beings hurting each other was almost impossible to understand. "Send the data to the Science Council," Zefali ordered. "Let them make sense of this madness." 3 days later, the response came back from the Zilithian capital. The Science Council had reviewed the data and reached a conclusion. The species on the third planet of Sol were classified as Class D primitives. They were technologically backward, politically unstable, and showed clear signs of being an evolutionary dead end. The constant fighting would eventually destroy them, so they posed no threat to the Empire. Admiral Vextar read the report while floating in his command pool aboard the flagship, Eternal Harmony. Like all Zilithians, he was tall and thin, with smooth blue-green skin and large eyes that had evolved to see in the dim light of their homeworld. His species had never known war. For over 10,000 years, the Zilithian Empire had expanded peacefully across the galaxy, offering protection and guidance to primitive species in exchange for resources and loyalty. "Humans," Vextar said, reading the name the aliens had given themselves. "What a strange sound. And look at their behavior patterns." He gestured at the holographic display showing Earth. Red markers indicated areas of conflict. There were dozens of them scattered across the planet's surface. "They fight over everything," reported Science Officer Melfi. "Water, land, invisible lines they draw on maps. Even ideas about which invisible beings they should worship. Our behavioral models cannot explain why an intelligent species would waste so much energy on conflict." Vextar's advisor, an ancient Zilithian named Quindar, swam closer to the display. "Perhaps they are not truly intelligent, Admiral. Many species show signs of basic tool use and communication before achieving true wisdom. These humans may simply be very advanced animals." The Admiral nodded slowly. This explanation made sense. The humans had developed some impressive technology for primitives. They had split the atom, built flying machines, and even sent a few crude vehicles beyond their atmosphere. But they used much of this technology to hurt each other. No truly intelligent species would be so wasteful and destructive. "What do the probability models say about threat assessment?" Vextar asked. "The humans pose a 0.003% threat level to Empire interests, sir. Even if they achieve faster-than-light travel tomorrow, their habit of fighting each other means they could never unite enough to challenge us. Most likely, they will destroy themselves within a few thousand years." "And their planet's resources?" "Significant, Admiral. The world has large deposits of rare minerals we need for expansion. The water alone would supply a dozen frontier colonies. The humans are sitting on one of the most resource-rich worlds in this sector." Vextar made his decision. "Prepare an exploration vessel. We will make contact with these humans and offer them the same choice we give all primitive species. They can accept relocation to a protected world where they can live in peace, or they can resist and face the consequences. The ship chosen for the mission was the Gentle Current, a light exploration vessel designed for first contact with primitive species. It carried minimal weapons and a crew of scientists and diplomats. The ship's AI calculated that such a small force would be more than enough to handle the humans. After all, the aliens could barely leave their own atmosphere. How could they possibly threaten the starship? Captain Yulwen commanded the Gentle Current as it entered the Sol system 2 weeks later. The ship's advanced sensors immediately began collecting detailed information about Earth and its inhabitants. What they found only confirmed the Empire's low opinion of humanity. The planet was divided into hundreds of different political groups, many of which seemed to exist only to oppose each other. The humans had thousands of different languages, hundreds of different belief systems, and were constantly arguing about nearly everything. Their cities produced vast amounts of pollution. Their military forces were primitive but numerous, with weapons designed to cause maximum suffering to their own kind. "Look at this," said Communications Officer Zalthi, pointing at her display. "They have over 15,000 nuclear weapons pointed at each other. 15,000. They could destroy their entire world several times over, and they built these weapons to use against their own species." Captain Yulwen felt a mixture of disgust and pity. Truly, these beings are lost. The sooner we relocate them to a peaceful world, the sooner we can begin healing the damage they have done to their planet. The ship took position in Earth's outer atmosphere and began preparing for first contact. Standard Empire procedure was to announce their presence, explain the situation clearly, and give the primitive species time to understand their new circumstances. Most species were grateful for the Empire's guidance. Some were afraid at first, but quickly learned that resistance was pointless. The humans would surely be no different. They were divided, primitive, and clearly incapable of working together. The Empire's offer of relocation would save them from their own destructive nature. It was an act of mercy, really. Captain Yulwen had no way of knowing that down on Earth, deep in underground bunkers and hidden facilities, human military leaders were already tracking his ship. They had been preparing for this moment for decades, ever since their first radio telescopes had suggested they were not alone in the universe. The humans had learned many things during their violent history, but perhaps the most important lesson was this: when someone comes to take your home, you make them pay for every inch. The message came at exactly noon, Earth Standard Time, broadcast simultaneously to every radio, television, and communication device on the planet. The signal was so powerful that even devices that were turned off suddenly sparked to life, carrying the alien words into billions of human homes. "Greetings, inhabitants of the third planet. We are the Zalithian Empire. We have come to offer you a choice." The voice was strange, translated by alien machines into human languages, but the meaning was crystal clear. Captain Yulwen's ship hung in Earth's upper atmosphere, like a silver needle against the blue sky, clearly visible to anyone who looked up. "Your species has been evaluated according to galactic law. You are classified as a primitive, pre-contact civilization. Your constant warfare and destructive behavior mark you as unsuitable guardians of this world's resources. However, the Empire is merciful. We offer you relocation to suitable worlds where you may live in peace under our protection." In the United Nations building in New York, emergency meetings had been going on for 3 days since the alien ship first appeared. Representatives from nearly every nation on Earth sat around tables, many of them people who had been enemies just hours before. The Secretary General, Maria Santos, watched the broadcast with a mixture of fear and anger. "You have 30 of your planetary cycles to prepare for relocation," the alien voice continued. Gather your personal belongings and important cultural items. Transport ships will arrive to take you to your new homes. Do not attempt to resist this process. It is for your own benefit. The broadcast ended as suddenly as it had begun. For a moment, the entire planet was silent. Then the shouting started. In the emergency session at the UN, the Russian representative slammed his fist on the table. These aliens want to steal our planet and relocate us like we are animals. The question is whether we can fight them, said the American Secretary of Defense, General Patricia Hayes. Their technology is clearly far beyond ours. That ship has been sitting in our atmosphere for days, and our best missiles can't reach it. Maybe we should listen to them, suggested the delegate from Switzerland. If their civilization is truly advanced, perhaps they know better ways to live than constant conflict. You want to give up Earth without a fight? The Chinese representative's voice was cold with fury. This is our world. Our ancestors are buried in this soil. You would abandon all of that? What choice do we have? Replied the Swiss delegate. If we resist, they might destroy us all. Secretary General Santos looked around the room at faces that represented every nation, every culture, every people on Earth. These were men and women who had spent their careers arguing with each other, fighting over trade deals, border disputes, and political differences. But now, facing an outside threat, something was changing. General Hayes, Santos said, what are our military capabilities? The general looked grim. Limited against this level of technology. But we've been preparing for this possibility since the 1950s. Every major military has contingency plans for alien contact. We've been sharing intelligence for the past 3 days in ways that would have been impossible before this crisis. What kind of plans? Asymmetric warfare, guerrilla tactics. We can't match their technology, but we can make occupation very expensive for them. The problem is coordination. Humanity has never fought as a unified force. Then maybe it's time we learned, said the British Prime Minister quietly. Over the next week, something unprecedented began happening on Earth. Ancient enemies started sharing secrets. Israeli and Palestinian scientists worked together to analyze the alien technology. North and South Korean military officers sat in the same briefing rooms. Indian and Pakistani engineers collaborated on defensive systems. The Russians shared their research on electromagnetic pulse weapons. The Americans opened their classified files on theoretical alien combat scenarios. The Chinese provided manufacturing capabilities. The Europeans contributed their diplomatic experience and organizational skills. Dr. Sarah Chen, a physicist from MIT, found herself working 18-hour days in a secret facility beneath Geneva. Around her, the greatest minds from every nation worked frantically to understand the alien threat. Look at this, she said to her colleague, Dr. Dmitry Volkov from Moscow University. The alien ship's energy signature shows they're using controlled fusion, but their power distribution is inefficient. There are gaps in their shielding. I see it, Dmitry replied, studying the data. If we could coordinate our remaining satellite network, we might be able to map their vulnerabilities. 6 months ago, our governments wouldn't let us share lunch recipes, Sarah said with a tired smile. Now we're sharing state secrets to save the world. The aliens watched these developments with growing confusion. Their sensors showed increased communication between human governments, but they interpreted this as preparation for evacuation. Surely these primitive beings were not foolish enough to consider resistance. Captain Yulwen reported back to Admiral Vextar every day. The humans are showing more coordination than expected, Admiral, but we believe they are simply organizing their relocation efforts. Some groups are moving resources around their planet, probably gathering important cultural items as instructed. Any signs of military preparation? The Admiral asked. Minimal, sir. They are still fighting each other in several regions. Their weapons remain primitive. A few of their leaders have made angry speeches, but this is expected. Primitive species often show initial defiance before rejecting reality. What the Zilithians didn't understand was that humans had been telling stories about alien invasion for over a century. Books, movies, television shows, video games, human entertainment had explored every possible scenario. Military strategists had grown up reading science fiction and watching films about interstellar war. They had been unconsciously preparing for this moment their entire lives. When the 30-day deadline arrived, the response came not from one government, but from a hastily formed organization, calling itself the United Earth Defense Council. The message was broadcast on all channels, simultaneously translated into Zilithian, and transmitted directly to their ship. Secretary General Santos stood before the cameras, flanked by military leaders from every major nation. Behind her was a new flag, showing the Earth surrounded by stars, hastily designed but already flying over government buildings worldwide. To the Zilithian Empire, she began, her voice steady, despite the weight of the moment. We have carefully considered your offer of relocation. Our answer is no. On the bridge of the Gentle Current, Captain Yulwen stared at his translation computers in disbelief. They said no? Santos continued. It has been our home for over 200,000 years. We will not be relocated like livestock. We will not surrender our world to anyone, no matter how advanced their technology. If you want Earth, you will have to take it from us. The Secretary General paused, then added words that had been suggested by historians who understood the power of human memory. We have a saying on our world, remember Pearl Harbor. Perhaps it is time you learned what that means. The broadcast ended with images of Earth from space, beautiful, blue, and defiant. Captain Yulwen immediately contacted Admiral Vextar. Sir, the humans have refused relocation. They appear to be preparing for armed resistance. The Admiral's response was swift and decisive. One ship will be sufficient to demonstrate our superiority. Begin bombardment of their military installations. Minimal force only. We want to encourage surrender, not destroy potential workers. But as the Gentle Current's weapons powered up for the first strike, deep beneath the Earth's surface, in bunkers and caves and hidden facilities around the world, humanity was preparing to show these aliens exactly what 200,000 years of evolution on a death world had taught them about survival. The first energy beam from the Gentle Current struck the Cheyenne Mountain Complex in Colorado at 1432 local time. The blast carved through 60 feet of solid granite in seconds, destroying what the aliens believed was a major human military installation. Similar strikes hit bases in Russia, China, Britain, and France. The message was clear: surrender now or face complete destruction. Captain Yulwen watched the tactical display with satisfaction. The humans would surely see reason now. No primitive species could withstand the Empire's technology. Within hours, messages of surrender would begin arriving. Instead, something else happened. At 1547, every communications satellite still in orbit around Earth suddenly broadcast the same signal. It was music, a piece called the Battle Hymn of the Republic, played by orchestras from every major nation simultaneously. As the music played, the lyrics appeared in text on every screen. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. What are they doing? Asked Communications Officer Zalfi, staring at her instruments in confusion. Before Yulwen could answer, the music stopped, and a new voice came through the speakers. It was General Patricia Hayes, speaking from a location the aliens couldn't identify. Message to the Zilithian ship: you have fired on military targets of the United Earth Defense Council. As of this moment, a state of war exists between humanity and the Zilithian Empire. We do not surrender. We do not retreat. Come and take our world if you can. The transmission ended with something that made every Zilithian on the ship feel cold despite their warm-blooded nature. It was the sound of 10 billion humans cheering. What happened next defied every prediction in Zilithian tactical doctrine. The attack came from everywhere at once. Ancient radar installations that the aliens thought were destroyed suddenly came online, guided by hidden backup systems. Missiles launched from submarines thousands of miles away, following flight paths calculated by computers the Zilithians didn't know existed. Fighter jets rose from highways that had been converted to airstrips, flying attack patterns that seemed suicidal, but somehow worked. The human weapons were primitive by Empire standards, but they were used in ways the Zilithians had never imagined. Conventional explosives created electromagnetic pulses that interfered with Zilithian sensors. Chemical rockets delivered payloads of simple iron particles that sandblasted the ship's hull at incredible speeds. Nuclear submarines surfaced just long enough to fire missiles before disappearing back into the depths. Impossible, Captain Yulwen shouted as his ship shuddered under the assault. How are they coordinating these attacks? Their communications should be completely disrupted. What the captain didn't know was that human military planners had spent decades preparing for exactly this scenario. They had studied every science fiction film, every novel about alien invasion, every theoretical paper on asymmetric warfare. More importantly, they had learned from thousands of years of fighting each other. The humans were using tactics that no peaceful species would ever develop. They attacked from multiple directions simultaneously. They used decoys and false signals to confuse targeting systems. They sacrificed smaller forces to create openings for larger strikes. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to enjoy the tactical challenge. In a bunker beneath the Swiss Alps, Dr. Sarah Chen monitored the battle through feeds from around the world. "Look at this," she called to her international team of scientists. "The alien ship's shields are adapting to our weapons. But there's a delay of 2.3 seconds between adaptation cycles. Can we exploit that?" asked Dr. Volkov. "Already working on it. If we can coordinate strikes to hit different shield frequencies in rapid succession during that gap." "Yes, send this to all attack groups, immediately." The Zilithian ship shuddered as a new wave of attacks struck during the precise moment when its shields were recalibrating. For the first time in Imperial history, a single exploration vessel was taking damage from a primitive species. But the humans were just getting started. Within hours, manufacturing plants across Earth were retooling at incredible speed. Factories that had made cars in the morning were producing electromagnetic pulse weapons by evening. Civilian internet networks, protected by redundancies the aliens never suspected, carried tactical data between military units on different continents. Scientists shared weapons designs in real time, improving them with each iteration. The Zilithians discovered that human creativity was terrifying. When conventional tactics failed, humans invented new ones. When their weapons proved inadequate, they built better ones. When their enemy adapted to their strategies, they developed counter-adaptations faster than any computer model predicted. "Captain," reported Science Officer Melfi, her voice tight with fear, "the humans are demonstrating learning capabilities far beyond our projections. They're adapting to our technology faster than we're adapting to theirs." Captain Yulwen studied the tactical display, his four hands moving in gestures of confusion and growing alarm. The humans were attacking in patterns that made no logical sense from a peaceful species perspective, but were devastatingly effective. They seemed to understand concepts like sacrifice, misdirection, and acceptable losses in ways that his people couldn't comprehend. "How many humans are participating in these attacks?" he asked. "All of them, sir," replied Melfi quietly. "Our sensors detect military activity on every continent. They've mobilized their entire species." "That's impossible. No primitive species can achieve that level of coordination." "Sir," interrupted the ship's AI, "I'm detecting massive data transfers between human population centers. They appear to be sharing technical information at unprecedented rates." What the AI was detecting was something unprecedented in galactic history. An entire species working together with total focus and coordination. Ancient enemies were sharing their most classified military secrets. Rival corporations were giving away proprietary technology. Scientists were publishing breakthrough research without concern for patents or recognition. The humans had done something no peaceful species could understand. They had turned war itself into a form of cooperation. As the battle continued through the night, reports began reaching Admiral Vextar aboard the Eternal Harmony. At first, he refused to believe them. One primitive planet cannot resist an Imperial vessel, he insisted. Captain Yulwen must be exaggerating the situation. But as more data arrived, the Admiral's confidence began to crack. The humans weren't just resisting, they were winning. The gentle current was being forced to retreat to higher orbit, its shields failing, its weapon systems damaged by attacks that should have been impossible. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a message from Earth. It's addressed to you personally. Put it through." The image that appeared on the main screen was of a human female in military uniform. Behind her stood representatives from every major human government, all wearing the same grim expression of determination. "Admiral Vextar of the Zalithian Empire," General Hayes began. "I am General Patricia Hayes of the United Earth Defense Council. You have attacked our world without provocation. You have killed our people. You have threatened our children. This was a mistake." The general paused, and when she continued, her voice carried a weight that made even the peaceful Zalithians understand the meaning of threat. "We know you think we are primitive. We know you think we are weak because we fight among ourselves. But you have misunderstood what that fighting has taught us. For thousands of years, we have been training for this moment. Training to fight an enemy with superior technology and resources. We have learned to fight smart, to fight dirty, and to never stop fighting until our enemy is destroyed." The general stepped closer to the camera. "You wanted our world, now you have our attention. We suggest you leave while you still can." The transmission ended with an image of Earth, but now it was different. Lights blazed from every continent, as humanity's industries worked at full capacity. The planet looked like a fortress, preparing for siege. Admiral Vextar stared at the screen for long moments after the image faded. For the first time in his career, he began to understand that the Empire had made a terrible miscalculation. These humans weren't primitive at all. They were something far more dangerous, a species that had learned to treat war as an art form. He opened a channel to the gentle current. "Captain Yulwen, withdraw to safe distance and await reinforcements." "Sir?" Yulwen's voice carried confusion. "We're withdrawing from a primitive world?" The Admiral looked at the tactical reports again, seeing patterns of coordination and strategic thinking that chilled his peaceful soul. "Captain, I don't think these beings are primitive at all. I think we may have just awakened something that should have been left alone." As the Zalithian ship limped away from Earth, deeper into the solar system, humanity celebrated their first victory. But in command centers around the world, military leaders were already planning their next move. The aliens had brought war to humanity. Now humanity would bring war to them. Admiral Vextar's call for reinforcements brought 12 more ships of the Imperial fleet to the Sol system within a week. The Zalithian High Command had decided that the situation on Earth required a stronger response. Surely, a full battle group would be enough to subdue one primitive planet. They were wrong. The humans had used their week of preparation well. When the Zalithian fleet arrived, they found something that defied all understanding. The third planet was surrounded by a defensive grid, unlike anything in Imperial records. Crude, but effective weapons platforms floated in orbit, built from modified satellites, space junk, and anything else the humans could launch into space. The entire planet bristled with activity. "How did they do this so quickly?" asked Fleet Captain Mordun from the bridge of the heavy cruiser's Serene Victory. "Our intelligence reports said they barely had the technology to leave their atmosphere." Admiral Vextar studied the tactical display with growing unease. They appear to have converted their entire industrial capacity to military production in less than 7 days. This should be impossible for any civilization, let alone a primitive one. What the Zilithians were seeing was humanity operating under conditions they had evolved for over millions of years, total warfare for survival. Every human on Earth understood that this was not a simple conflict over territory or resources. This was a fight for the continued existence of their species, and when faced with extinction, humans became something terrifying. Dr. Sarah Chen had not slept for 4 days. Neither had most of the scientific team working beneath Geneva. They had been analyzing captured Zilithian technology, reverse engineering alien systems, and developing countermeasures at a pace that would have been impossible under normal circumstances. But these were not normal circumstances. "Look at this," she said to Dr. Volkov, pointing at a complex diagram on her screen. "The Zilithian fusion reactors use a containment field that's incredibly efficient, but it has to reset every 4.7 minutes. During that reset, there's a window of exactly 0.3 seconds where the field is vulnerable." "Can we exploit this?" asked Dr. Martinez from Spain, who had joined the team 2 days earlier. "Better than that," Sarah replied, with the kind of smile that had once scared her university professors. "We can use their own technology against them. I've figured out how to modify our electromagnetic pulse weapons to resonate at the exact frequency that will destabilize their containment fields. That will cause their reactors to overload," Dr. Volkov said quietly. "Yes," Sarah confirmed. "Complete catastrophic failure. Their own power systems will destroy them from the inside." This was the moment when Dr. Volkov, a man who had spent his entire career working for peace, truly understood what his species had become. The humans weren't just fighting for survival. They were enjoying the intellectual challenge of war. Sarah's expression was the same one she wore when solving complex physics equations. To her, destroying the alien fleet was simply another problem to be solved. The first test of humanity's new weapons came when the Zilithian fleet attempted a coordinated bombardment of Earth's major cities. What they encountered instead was a demonstration of why peaceful species should never fight persistence hunters. Lieutenant Commander Maria Gonzalez piloted her modified fighter through a storm of alien energy blasts, her ship's hull glowing cherry red from near misses. Behind her flew 17 other pilots, all volunteers for what military planners had labeled a maximum risk mission. The survival probability was less than 5%. All 18 pilots had volunteered immediately. "Target acquired," Maria reported calmly, as her ship screamed toward the alien cruiser at speeds that would kill most beings through acceleration alone. "Beginning attack run." Her weapons were simple by Zilithian standards, chemical rockets with conventional explosive warheads, but the warheads had been modified with Dr. Chen's new electromagnetic pulse technology. And Maria had spent her entire life training for exactly this kind of mission without knowing it. Human pilots were different from other species in the galaxy. They had evolved from persistence hunters who chased prey across vast distances without stopping. Their ancestors had been creatures who could run for days without rest, who could endure pain and exhaustion that would kill other animals, who never gave up once they had locked onto a target. Maria's fighter took a direct hit that destroyed her left engine and cracked her cockpit. Warning alarms screamed as her life support systems failed. Any rational being would have ejected or retreated to save their life. Instead, Maria redirected all remaining power to her weapons and continued her attack run. "Ghost 7 is going down," she reported, with the same calm tone she might use to order coffee. "But I'm taking these aliens with me." Her modified torpedo struck the Zilithian cruiser's reactor housing at exactly the moment Dr. Chen had calculated. The electromagnetic pulse resonated through the ship's containment field, destabilizing the fusion reaction that powered the entire vessel. Captain Mordun had just enough time to realize what was happening before his ship tore itself apart in a chain reaction of explosions that lit up the darkness between worlds. Across the solar system, similar attacks were taking place. Human forces demonstrated capabilities that shattered every assumption in Zilithian military doctrine. Pilots flew damaged ships long after any reasonable being would have given up. Soldiers fought with injuries that should have been incapacitating. Engineers worked for days without sleep, driven by the same relentless determination that had once allowed their ancestors to hunt mammoths across Ice Age landscapes. But perhaps most terrifying of all was how quickly humans learned and adapted. Within hours of the first successful attack on a Zilithian ship, the technical specifications were being transmitted to every human military unit in the solar system. Scientists on Earth analyzed the wreckage and developed improvements. Engineers refined the weapons. Military strategists devised new tactics. The Zilithians watched in horror as each wave of human attacks became more effective than the last. The aliens' technological advantages were being neutralized by human creativity faster than their own engineers could develop countermeasures. Admiral, reported Intelligence Officer Quintel from the flagship. The humans are sharing tactical data in real time across their entire species. Every lesson learned by one group is immediately available to all others. Admiral Vextar felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. How is this possible? No species can coordinate at this level without central command. Sir, I believe the humans have weaponized their own natural cooperation instincts. They appear to view information sharing as a survival mechanism. The Admiral studied the latest reports. Human attacks were becoming more sophisticated by the hour. They were using tactics that no peaceful species would ever develop, attacking in waves designed to gather intelligence even at the cost of heavy casualties, using damaged ships as guided weapons, coordinating suicide attacks that served strategic purposes. Most disturbing was the humans' apparent ability to find enjoyment in the challenge of war. Intercepted communications showed human military leaders speaking of elegant solutions and beautiful strategies with the same enthusiasm Zilithian poets reserved for art. These beings treated combat as a form of creative expression. Sir, Communications Officer Veltan called urgently. We're receiving a transmission from Earth. Put it through. The image that appeared was of a human military facility, clearly underground and heavily fortified. General Hayes stood before a wall display showing the current battle situation. Behind her, the flags of every nation on Earth hung side by side. Admiral Vextar, she began, I want to make sure you understand your situation. You came to our system expecting to fight primitives. Instead, you're fighting a species that has spent 200,000 years learning to survive on one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. Do you see these tactical markers? Each one represents a group of humans who have volunteered to die to protect their world. We have more volunteers than we have equipment to give them. Do you understand what this means? Vextar did understand, and it filled him with horror. These humans were willing to sacrifice themselves, not just for survival, but for the abstract concept of keeping their world free. They fought not because they had to, but because they chose to. Your ships are powerful, General Hayes continued, but they are operated by beings who evolved on a world where the greatest danger was running out of food. Our ships are operated by beings who evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill them every single day. The general stepped closer to the camera. We've been studying your technology, Admiral. Your ships are efficient, but they're designed by people who never had to fight for their lives. Ours are designed by people who have been fighting since before we could walk upright. The transmission showed images of human weapons, crude by Zilithian standards, but built with a vicious efficiency that spoke of millions of years of evolutionary refinement in the art of violence. Every human on this planet knows how to make weapons from simple materials, the general explained. Every human knows how to hunt, how to track, how to kill when necessary. These are not skills we learned in schools, Admiral. These are instincts carved into our DNA by evolution. The final image was of Earth itself, but now the Zilithians could see it differently. This was not a peaceful garden world like their own home. This was a forge world, a place where intelligence and violence had been hammered together over millions of years to create something unique in the galaxy, a species that treated war as both art and science. "You have three choices, Admiral," General Hayes concluded. "Withdraw from our system immediately, continue this fight and lose more ships, or escalate to total warfare and learn why every other species on Earth is extinct except us." As the transmission ended, Admiral Vextar realized that the Empire had made a catastrophic error in judgment. These humans weren't primitives at all. They were apex predators who had learned to build starships, and now they were hunting the hunters. Admiral Vextar chose to escalate. The decision came from the Zilithian High Command after emergency sessions that lasted 3 days. The Empire had never faced rebellion on this scale. If word spread that a primitive species had successfully resisted Imperial forces, the entire galactic order would collapse. Every subject world would begin to question Zilithian authority. "The humans must be crushed completely," declared Supreme Commander Thesal from the Empire's capital world. "Use whatever force is necessary. The galaxy must see that resistance to the Empire is futile." Vextar assembled the largest fleet in Imperial history, 237 ships, carrying the most advanced weapons the Empire possessed. It would take 6 months for the fleet to reach Earth, but when it arrived, there would be no question of the outcome. No single world could stand against such force. The humans used those 6 months well. Sarah Chen stood in what had once been the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland. The massive particle accelerator had been converted into something the universe had never seen before. A faster-than-light communication array built from reversed Zilithian technology. Around her, scientists from every nation worked at stations connected by quantum entanglement fields that shouldn't have been possible with Earth's technology. "Connection established," announced Dr. Volkov from his station. "We're receiving responses from 47 star systems." Sarah smiled. The humans had done something the Zilithians thought impossible. They had reverse-engineered FTL communication technology in less than 4 months, then used it to contact every known alien civilization in the local galaxy cluster. "Are they willing to listen?" Sarah asked. "More than willing," replied Volkov. "Apparently most of them have wanted to resist the Empire for centuries. When they received our message, well, let's just say we're not alone in this fight anymore." What the humans had discovered was that the Zilithian Empire's benevolent protection was nothing more than sophisticated slavery. The Empire had convinced hundreds of worlds that resistance was impossible, that cooperation was the only path to survival. But now a primitive species from a backwater system was proving that the Empire could be beaten. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The Vegan Confederacy, a group of industrial worlds that had been forced to provide materials to the Empire for 3 centuries, quietly began sabotaging Zilithian supply lines. The Antaran Republic, whose people had been relocated to safer worlds to make room for Zilithian expansion, suddenly rediscovered their military heritage. Ancient warrior races that had been pacified by Imperial guidance began remembering what they had been before the Zilithians arrived. But most importantly, they all began sharing information about Imperial weaknesses, tactical vulnerabilities, and strategic resources. The humans had started a galactic revolution simply by proving that the Empire could bleed. When the massive Zilithian fleet finally arrived at Earth, they found something that defied all possibility. The humans were no longer alone. Admiral Vextar stared at his tactical display in disbelief. The Sol system was defended not just by crude human vessels, but by ships from dozens of different civilizations. The Antarans had sent their legendary battle cruisers. The Vegans provided industrial support ships capable of manufacturing weapons in real time. Ancient warrior races brought weapons that had been hidden for centuries, waiting for this moment. How, was all Vextar could manage to say. The answer came from Captain Sarah Chen, who now commanded the human vessel Indomitable Spirit, built in the asteroid belt using a combination of human engineering and alien technology that should have taken decades to develop. Admiral Vextar, her voice came through the communication system with perfect clarity. I want to thank you. Your empire spent thousands of years convincing the galaxy that resistance was impossible. You made them believe they were weak, that they needed your protection. But you made one critical error. On the main screen, Admiral Vextar could see the human ship, a terrifying fusion of technologies from a dozen different worlds, bristling with weapons that had never been seen before in galactic warfare. You assumed that because we fight each other, we were incapable of unity, Captain Chen continued. But what you didn't understand is that fighting each other taught us how to fight anyone. And when you threatened our home, you didn't just unite humanity. You taught the entire galaxy how to unite. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. The humans had done more than just reverse engineer Zelithian technology. They had improved it. Every weakness the Empire had hidden behind centuries of overwhelming force was now exposed and exploited. Ships from dozens of worlds fought with tactics no peaceful species would ever develop. They used suicide attacks, coordinated strikes, and weapons designed for maximum psychological impact. But most importantly, they fought with something the Empire had never faced before: the absolute certainty that victory was possible. The Zelithian fleet, designed for suppressing primitive rebellions, found itself facing an enemy that had turned warfare into science. Every Imperial tactical response had been anticipated and countered. Every technological advantage was neutralized by superior strategy and unlimited creativity. Admiral Vextar watched his fleet disintegrate around him. Ship after ship fell to weapons that combined the best technology of multiple civilizations with human ingenuity and alien determination. The Empire's greatest military force was being destroyed by the very species they had dismissed as primitives. Sir, his communications officer reported, voice shaking, we're receiving surrender demands from 17 different civilizations. They're demanding we withdraw from all occupied systems. Surrender demands? Vextar couldn't process what he was hearing. The Empire does not receive surrender demands. Sir, the Antaran Republic has just broadcast a message to the entire galaxy. They're declaring independence from Imperial rule. So have the Vegans, the Altarians, and 43 other systems. On his tactical display, Admiral Vextar watched the last of his ships struggling against impossible odds. The humans had not just defeated the Empire's military forces. They had inspired a galactic revolution that was spreading faster than the Empire could respond to it. The final transmission came from General Patricia Hayes, speaking from the surface of Earth. Behind her, the flags of every free world in the galaxy hung in a display of unity that would have been unthinkable 6 months earlier. Admiral Vextar, she began, the war is over. Your fleet is destroyed. Your empire is collapsing as we speak. But unlike your people, we do not believe in conquest for its own sake. The general gestured to a document on the table beside her. We are prepared to offer terms that your people might find surprising. What the humans offered was unlike anything in galactic history. Instead of demanding tribute or territory, they proposed something revolutionary, a galactic federation based on mutual defense and shared knowledge. Every species would retain sovereignty over their own worlds. Technology and resources would be shared freely. Most importantly, any civilization that declared unprovoked war would face not just their intended victim, but the entire Federation. You see, Admiral, General Hayes explained, we learned something during this war. Fighting each other made us strong, but fighting together made us unstoppable. We're offering that same strength to every civilization in the galaxy. The treaty was signed on Earth 6 months later, with representatives from over 300 worlds. The Zelithian Empire officially disbanded, its former territories either joining the new federation or declaring complete independence. The galaxy had been transformed from a collection of subjugated worlds into a community of equal partners. Admiral Vextar, now a prisoner of war, but treated with surprising dignity, found himself in a comfortable cell on Earth while the new galactic order took shape. His captors had provided him with books about human history and philosophy, trying to help him understand what had happened. One day, Dr. Sarah Chen came to visit him. She was still young, but the war had changed her in ways that made her seem older than her years. "Do you understand now?" she asked, sitting across from him in the cell's small meeting room. Vextar looked up from the book he had been reading, a human text about something called the Munich Conference and the dangers of appeasing aggressive powers. "I think I am beginning to," he replied slowly. "You are not primitives at all, are you?" "No," Sarah agreed. "We're something much more dangerous. We're survivors who learn to thrive." "Your species fought wars for thousands of years," Vextar said, still struggling to understand. "We thought this made you weak." "It made us strong," Sarah corrected, "but more importantly, it taught us the difference between fighting for conquest and fighting for survival. When you threatened our home, you taught us something we had never learned from fighting each other." "What was that?" Sarah smiled, and for the first time, Vextar saw in that smile not the expression of a primitive being, but something far more complex. The look of a predator that had chosen to become a protector. "You taught us how to turn our greatest weakness into our greatest strength. You taught us how to stop fighting each other and start fighting together." As news of the Federation's formation spread across the galaxy, one message was transmitted to every inhabited system. It was simple, direct, and carried a weight that every civilization understood. The Terran Federation is now accepting applications for membership. We offer mutual defense, shared prosperity, and the promise that no world will ever again face extinction alone. Declaration of war against existing members is strongly discouraged. The galaxy had learned that there was a difference between being the most advanced species and being the most lethal. Humanity was not the strongest civilization in the galaxy, nor the most technologically sophisticated. But they were the ones who had learned to turn war itself into a form of peace. And that made all the difference.